Good afternoon slash evening slash night slash whenever you are listening to this, ladies and gentlemen. It is 10:44 p.m. June 7th, 2019 in the great state of Texas. My name is Mickey, and I'm the producer of yet another episode of the Backyard Bullshit Podcast. And with me is Chip. We're bringing him back to see if he can swing with us full time. And we also have cousin Vinny.
Lost here in Kansas City. Your cousin Vinny is cold, lonely, and has been missing you listeners.
Yeah, so we welcome him back with open arms, and I'm sure the audience does as well. And we also have with us Dealer.
Hey everyone, sit down at the table. It's time for another game.
And last but certainly not least, Coolhand.
How's it going, everybody? Let's get this started.
And get this started we will. So, as I'm recording this, Game 4 of the NBA Finals just ended, and the Stanley Cup Finals are in full swing. Now, we already gave our predictions on how we think those are going to go, so the next episode will more than likely be us talking about that. In the meantime, we have an extremely fun episode for you where we're going to discuss a lot of special topics.
Special topics.
Yes, they are guaranteed to be fun. And with that being said, let's get into our first one. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are in fact a Dallas-based podcast. And Dallas has been gifted to the point where we have the big four major sports. Or at least we have four teams of the major sports here. We have football, we have basketball, baseball, hockey. We even have a soccer team. Now, the reason I bring this up, Mount Rushmore is a man-made structure of the United States' some of our most well-known and best presidents. Now,
is that definition on Wikipedia? That sounds like that's from Wikipedia.
It's actually on Urban Dictionary, if you can believe that.
Oh, okay. We're stepping things up on the backyard.
Nothing but class here at the BYBS show. And so, with the Mount Rushmore of America, I thought it would be fun if we all decided on what would our Dallas Sports Mount Rushmore be. Who are the four people we want their heads enshrined in a mountaintop? And to start us off, we are going to go to Chip.
Alright, so for me, I think there's two easy ones. Hockey, you got Mike Modano. Basketball, I don't even really think I have to say, but Dirk, obviously. Baseball, I was a little torn on that. Nolan Ryan is probably like the most well-known Ranger, but I feel like since he was only there, like kind of the back half of his career, I think I would go with Pudge. And then I want to be kind of a douchebag and give like a different answer for Canada. I decided to go with Herschel Walker for the Cowboys head, mainly because not because he was the best, but because of the trade. Without that Herschel Walker trade, they wouldn't have Evan Smith, they wouldn't have had Derek Woodson, a few other starters that were on the Super Bowl teams. So decided to be a douche and kind of go a little different way with the last one.
All right, so we have Herschel Walker, Mike Modano, Dirk Nowitzki, and Pudge Rodriguez. I'm curious how many of our picks are going to overlap. Like you mentioned earlier, a few sports, it's going to be quite easy. And so with that in mind, let's see if they do carry over when our good old cousin Vinny gives us his Mount Rushmore.
Hey, your cousin Vinny. Real quick, I do want to say to our boy Chip, I'm shocked at the Herschel Walker throw-in, but I like the bold move. That's the type of stuff we need here. My Mount Rushmore, I kind of would describe it as the millennial who grew up in Dallas Mount Rushmore, because there are a lot of names like Herschel Walker, Roger Staubach, plenty of names that throughout the history of Dallas sports made giant impact. But I didn't get to see them. And so as I'm putting together my Mount Rushmore of Dallas, I kind of had to use the own eyes of what I saw. That being said, two guys are definitely crossing over. That's Mike Modano and that's Dirk Nowitzki. Mike Modano, obviously the Stanley Cup, has brought the Stars their one championship, and really, when the Stars moved from Minnesota, pioneered that charge and made them popular in this community. He was the guy during all that. There were some other names like Darian Hatcher and Brett Hull and major players, Sergei Zubov, and there's other names that made it happen, but Mike Modano was always the hero. So I don't think there's any doubt he goes in. And then the same with Dirk. I could go on for an hour about how great Dirk is. They just renamed a street in front of the American Airlines Center Nowitzki Way, actually. The city of Dallas just approved that this week. So it goes without saying, Modano and Dirk. Now, for my last two, obviously I got to have a Dallas Cowboy, and I feel like you got to have a Texas Ranger in there. I chose Emmitt Smith as my Dallas Cowboy. I think there's a lot of good choices that could go there, but because the impact Emmitt made immediately when he got to this team, and then of course being part of the triplets, the Super Bowls in the 90s, and then he goes on to become the NFL's all-time leading rusher. It's just his accolades go on, and I think he's really a face of Dallas. As I picture this Mount Rushmore, I couldn't imagine any other Cowboy but him kind of representing. And then my last guy, Texas Ranger, I'm going to go Michael Young. Michael Young, he was just such a class act. There were when the Rangers kind of started their rise in, we'll say, 06, 07, and became competitive 08, and then 2009, 2010, 2011, we're playing and playoff runs and making it to the World Series twice, and he was there when they were bad, and as they got good, he was there. He was always just that constant. He almost seemed like a coach on the field, is the way I thought of Michael Young. But he was more than that because he had the skill, and when it all came down, I wanted somebody that was instrumental in the World Series runs. And while I think Pudge is great, for me, Michael Young was a bigger part of the glory years that were the Rangers. And so that's where mine comes in at.
All right. An interesting selection of players from all of the Dallas sports. And we're going to see if the crossover continues. Honestly, I think at this point it's kind of guaranteed at least one of them is going to carry over for all five of us. But for now, Dealer, who is your Mount Rushmore for Dallas sports?
So, two of them have already been named, and I'm just going to roll with them here. I think it goes without saying the NBA is Dirk. You got to have the Dallas Mav right there. So he's a hometown guy. Everybody loves Dirk. It's all about Dirk. That's just pretty set in stone for me. Go ahead, put him up there. No arguing with me. Dirk is the man for the NBA.
Deserves it. Unanimous.
Face of the franchise, and if I do say so, he could be the face of the franchise if he just hangs around and just does something, charity-wise, announcing-wise, whatever it is, once or twice a year. People will still love him for years to come. And he can stay relevant. He really can. I'm going to go ahead and say on the NHL side. Mike Modano, he's got to get it. I was real torn between Turco and Modano. Turco really gave teams a lot to think about. And, he had a lot of flair, really solid guy in the net. But Modano, man, he still leads. You look at the leaderboard for the Stars, it's him. So, Mike, you're going up there. Now, the next two, they haven't been mentioned yet. And I'm going to go ahead and start off with the Texas Rangers, and I'm going to go ahead and say Tom Grieve.
I love this call.
If you get the name Mr. Ranger, you should be on Mount Rushmore for the Texas Rangers. You know, I don't get me wrong, I love looking back and watching the old videos of Nolan Ryan throwing his fastball at the Pudge, right? And Pudge throwing out runners left and right. That's awesome, right? That is just, well, that gets my baseball jimmies running there. I can go back and watch it all day long. You know, Bouchel, he's right there. Bouchel's right there also. Pretty good guy, but no, he doesn't get it for me. Yeah, Tom Grieve, he's there from the beginning, and he's still there today. Even though he can't contribute on the field as much in a professional manner, right? He still goes out there and throws BP. He's one of the few guys that knows how to throw a knuckleball, and so before we faced R.A. Dickey, he was out there throwing his knuckleball. That's pretty amazing to me. That's Mr. Ranger, all about it. And then he went there, iced his arm, and got in the broadcast booth and called the game. So, to me, Tom Grieve, you get the nod. Salute to you on that one. Gonna go with another Tom for the Cowboys. And if you're guessing Tom Landry, you're guessing correct. I think Tom Landry, he got a freeway here. He needs to go up there. He's a legendary Cowboys coach. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't clap that you got 2 yards on third down, unlike the current coach. So, I'm a Tom Landry guy. I really liked all of his old videos, some of his audio whenever he had those post-game chats. He didn't talk about what went wrong, but he talked about the person. He talked about the player as if they were a person. And that's something that really I think we get too caught up in, is we either get way too caught up in the person or we get way too caught up in the numbers. But he's not afraid to say when someone of his players did something wrong, but he's also not afraid to talk about the personal side of the players. And that was something that I really thought humanized him as a coach.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Does Tom Landry get the hat, or does he go bald head?
No. You have to give him the hat. Come on.
Okay. He's got to have the hat. He's got to have the hat. Cool.
He's the only guy up there, yeah.
You don't even just put the hat. You don't even need to put Landry on there. Just put the hat.
Yeah. No face, just a giant hat.
You see that? Shit, man. Just put the hat on there. He's good to go.
And the statue can be extra focused on the plaid checkered. And yeah, I like this move.
Yeah.
And speaking of moves, now that Dealer has been so kind enough to give us his picks for the Dallas Mount Rushmore, we're going to go to our good old buddy Coolhand.
Hey, everybody. So I'm going a little more standard, but maybe for different reasons. Most of my guys, there was stuff off the field that was involved as well. That really helped me put them on there. But Dirk, not only did he create, the hysteria of basketball in Dallas, because Dallas basketball was absolute garbage before he got there. Mm-hmm. And he changed the attitude of fans in Dallas that they could actually win. Plus what he's done for the European players. I mean, he was the first great European player, really. There were some good players that had come over before that, but he's the first one that just was really the best and still young enough to grow up in the NBA. Then I've got to go with my boy Mike Modano. I watched him play a ton. He's the reason why I love hockey. Is because when I would watch Mike Modano when I was a kid in the Dallas area, he's just so smooth. Plus, he's probably the main reason that hockey's stuck in Dallas. I mean, look what's going on in Arizona. I mean, the Coyotes moved to Phoenix after the Stars moved to Dallas, and they're still owned by the NHL. So the fact that the Dallas Stars really took off and hockey really grew in this area is due to Mike Modano more than anybody else. So that's why I got to put him on there. baseball, I'm going a little straightforward. I got Pudge. I watched him play in his prime. He was amazing. My dad compared him to Johnny Bench. He grew up watching the Reds. And anytime you compare to arguably the best catcher of all time, I mean, you have to go up on there. Plus, he also helped establish the Latin roots that the Rangers now have. And look the Rangers now. They are truly a Latin team. I mean, the Rangers are mostly Latin players now. And then the Cowboys, if you're going to be America's team, you need to have an All-American boy, and that's Roger Staubach.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What he brought to the Cowboys was the legitimacy of the All-American team. You know, served his time in the Navy, you know, and then came over and then still whooped us. Got a Heisman. Just such a great player. Lost out on 4 years of his prime and still had a great career. I just don't know how
amazing is that? How amazing is that? I had forgotten that he got drafted after playing in a national championship and winning a Heisman. Spent 4 years in a war and was 28 years old when he was a rookie. 27 years old when he was a rookie, something like that. Like, and you're right. He totally deserves to go up there. Yeah.
So, a few surprises with Coolhand's picks. And now I'm going to close this segment out with my own Dallas Mount Rushmore. You know, I really am not going to deviate too much. I mean, with the Texas Rangers, I actually am going to go with Nolan Ryan. I will not argue that he spent the tail end of his career as a Texas Ranger, but he still managed to throw 2 no-hitters as a Texas Ranger. I mean, that Pudge is great, don't get me wrong, but on the pitching side, that's going to be very difficult for a future Ranger to beat. And then with the Stars, I mean, yeah, Mike Modano, he was the tip of the spear of that offense that got us to and won us the Stanley Cup. I know people still give Brett Hull shit for that goal that people say was not a goal, but hey, we got the trophy, so who gives a shit? Dallas, I mean, I feel like the only argument you can make for the Mavs is, other than Dirk, is Jason Kidd, because he came in, he was part of the Triple J's that existed in Dallas, and then for him to come back and actually win a championship with us as our not our star point guard, but our still very, very effective point guard. I mean, Jason Kidd is the only other argument you can make other than Dirk, because it's fucking Dirk.
Maybe throw Jason Terry in there. Maybe throw Jason Terry in that conversation.
No,
Sorry, I'll go away.
Fat lever.
I mean, Jason Terry was on both the 2006 and 2011 team, so I can sort of see where you're coming from.
Yeah, I think if you throw Jason Kidd, I mean, obviously there's no conversation other than Dirk. We all agree on that.
So how much better than Dirk would Luka Doncic have to be for him to supplant Dirk?
He would have to stay
More
with
than one championship.
He would have to stay with. And the thing is that Dirk has set the precedent where if you are a part of the Mavs for a good chunk of your career, but then go elsewhere for the rest of your career, that's unacceptable in Dallas terms, because 21 seasons, all with one team, that's Dirk Nowitzki. And
I heard an interesting point, too, about Kevin Durant and his free agency and why he's not, why Dallas isn't in the conversation. Because of the way they treat, look at how they treat their athletes. Look at the way Dirk has been celebrated, like you just said, Nick.
It is certainly true. I mean, you stick with us, we'll treat you as best you can, especially now that Mark Cuban seems to have his head on straight. And then for my last pick, we're going to go to America's team. You know, Coolhand, you mentioned that Roger Staubach was a good old American boy for America's team. But there was a time in the NFL history where people forgot that the Cowboys were America's team. And then Troy Aikman came on the scene, and he looked at the entire NFL and asked them one question. Did you forget who we are? And then the rest is football history. Troy Aikman. That is my pick for the Dallas Cowboys on our Mount Rushmore.
Wow.
Now, I'm not going to deny he had help. I mean, he had the Doomsday Defense. He had Michael Irvin, Emmitt Smith. But if it ain't Troy, if you're talking about that era, then it's fucking Troy, man. And
I'm going to make a bold statement. My favorite pick of this whole thing was Tom Green for the Rangers. I didn't think about it, but he was such an instrumental part of their team back in the day. And now he is the voice of the Rangers. And that's a cool connection. So MVP, that's the award I'm giving out, even though he wasn't on my own list.
yeah,
Thank you for that.
you know, I
I honestly forgot about Aikman, so I will toss you that one.
What?
So. No, I honestly, I wasn't even thinking that. I literally thought Dallas Cowboys, you know, who pops in your mind? But I was like, no, get Jerry Jones out of there. And I was like, oh, gotta get Romo out of there. You know, we have the Romo cult.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we gotta think like, you know, because yeah, sure, we got Cowboys, but we gotta think of the good Cowboys, you know, the quality Cowboys. And yeah, Aikman, that's a good there.
I agree.
It's interesting you mentioned Troy Aikman because Dealer, you took my pick and Tom Landry. So the instant I heard you say Tom Landry, I was like, shit. So I had to scramble for what my second pick was. I was like, oh, duh, this is gonna be easy.
I think it's funny how we all had different Rangers and different Cowboys, but we're so like dead on unanimous about the stars in the match.
I mean, I was quite close to giving the nod to Ken Hitchcock, but then when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, no, Mike Madonna, 100%.
Yuri Letman.
Oh,
That's
a great name. That's a great name.
He goes in the Hall of Very Good.
I think Sergei Zubov goes above Yuri Letman.
And we'll have to save this debate for another time.
I could feel the fighting hands going.
As we move on to
I miss you.
our second segment, which is the best player to never win a championship in any sport. And I'm going to lead us off on this topic. Now, gentlemen, would you be surprised if I was to tell you that there's a player in a sport that has two of their all-time leading records and did not win a championship? Would any of you be surprised?
That's a bold pick, Barry Bonds. I'm trying to think of who.
I'm not surprised. It makes sense.
Tony Gonzalez.
Well,
What sport are we talking here?
I mean, Tony Gonzalez.
Keep us on the line. Keep us on the hook.
Tony Gonzalez is not a bad pick by any means, but my player holds two National Basketball Association records. Now, some of you already know who this pick is, especially if you were here for the first backyard throwdown. Because my pick is John motherfucking Stockton. This son of a bitch is the goddamn NBA all-time leader in assists and steals, and the second place in both those categories is Jason Kidd, and it's not even goddamn close. John Stockton holds both of those records by a clear margin. And look at also these other accolades. A 5-time NBA All-Defensive, a 2-time NBA Steals champion, a 10-time NBA All-Star, 11-time NBA All-NBA team. I believe he was the co-MVP in the 1992-93 season with Karl Malone. And then this motherfucker's 9-time assist champion. And on top of that, he has the gold medal for being on the 1992 Dream Team, and he's a Hall of Famer. But you want to know why he doesn't have a championship? I have 2 words for you. Michael Jordan. How dare you, sir? Scottie Pippen? Oh, no.
Push off?
That is going to be another goddamn throwdown, I swear. But yes,
some basketball blasphemy going on here.
In my opinion, one of the best NBA players to never win a championship is John, insert last name here, Stockton. The accolades speak for themselves. So my rant is over. And as we transfer on over to a much more calm and collected person with Coolhand, as he tells us his best player from a sport to never win a championship.
I don't know, man. Coolhand's a mean drunk. He might get all rowdy, too.
I'm not drunk enough yet. Mine comes from the NFL. Maybe the most talented athlete ever in any sport. He had 15,292 yards in 218 games, and some of those were for some really bad teams. He had tons of catches, a bunch of touchdowns, holds the record for most yards and touchdowns in a season. Was part of a team that should have gone undefeated, other than maybe the craziest catch in the history of the Super Bowl, using a helmet. Mine is Randy Moss.
Oh.
Randy?
He was a 7-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All-Pro, most touchdowns in a season, 23, fastest to 5,000 receiving yards. He's the only player to have 1,600 receiving yards and 16 touchdowns in a season, and he had 10 1,000-yard-plus seasons. And he played 2 years in Oakland when they were absolute trash. We had Rich Gannon throwing him the ball.
Well, it's nice to know that some things in Oakland stay the same. Now, for those who are maybe unfamiliar with Randy Moss, what teams did he play for?
He was drafted by the Vikings out of the Thundering Herd.
Marshall, right?
Marshall, yep. Was actually originally at Florida State, but got in some trouble, so had to transfer to Marshall. Vikings got lucky, took him later in the draft. I believe it was the 22nd pick.
He does love the weed.
So him and Chris Carter, two of the most character people of all time, were on the same team at the same time. And they had Randall Cunningham throwing the ball. So Randy, I just need you to run as fast as you can. I'll just get it to you, don't worry. And then they were a mixed field goal, I believe his rookie year. They went 15-1 that season. The Vikings did, but they lost in the NFC Championship game to the Falcons, led by the Dirty Bird. And then plays a few years in Minnesota, goes to Oakland for 2 years, where it's just absolutely miserable. He had a cavalcade of quarterbacks, and then he went on to the New England Patriots, where when him and Tom Brady got together, had the best season ever. By a quarterback and a receiver.
Was that the year they lost to Eli? Was that one of the Giants years?
That was the year that he caught the helmet ball.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. Because when you said Randy Moss, I thought, wait, didn't he have a swim through the Patriots? I thought he got a ring. But
no, he didn't get one while he was there.
That's crazy. Good pick.
It is a real shame whenever you hear a story like Randy Moss's that on paper it sounds like this player has the near perfect career but just did not escalate over the championship mountain. And we have another example in Randy Moss, as unfortunate as that is. Moving right along. Dealer, who on earth could you pick for the best player to never win a championship in any sport?
Well, for me, this one, we're going to have to go way back, pull out your history books, because we are going with the honorary U.S. Army Captain, World War I veteran, Ty Cobb. And
whoa.
Exactly. The man who holds so many records, 5,000 times. This guy is amazing. So, sorry, check. I combined those two numbers right there. I got excited there. I said it's 4,000 hits, and he stole home plate 5 times. in succession after stealing second base, third base, then home plate. That he did that 5 times in his career. This guy was a speed demon. His motto in baseball was he only had one rule, and that was that you could not stand on one base for more than 1 second. And this guy, there was an old joke saying, I like to get my lead backwards because the pitcher doesn't know where I'm going. Ty Cobb would actually do that. He would fake that he's running and then start running very hard to first. And at this point, the pitcher completely doesn't know what to do and balks. Very, very extremely common to cause balks. And he just trots on down to second. He's laughing. The pitcher's all furious now. He's focused on just throwing a strike, saying, forget that, and Ty Cobb swiped third. That is just classic Ty Cobb. He's done. Not only did he serve in the military, but afterwards he went ahead and continued his legacy with the Negro League, becoming president there. He's one of the most dedicated baseball players with so many records still today, and absolutely one of the best baseball players of all times. And I think that the real thing here is Ty Cobb was America's first sports celebrity. And I say this because think of a sport in America that was bigger than baseball before baseball. There can't. Mm-hmm. Ty Cobb was the very first one to actually be written in the newspaper of opposing teams saying Ty Cobb is coming. We all write about it. Hey, Mike Trout's coming, Derek Jeter's coming. Famous people, right, are coming here. Everyone wants to go see tickets, buy tickets. Barry Bonds. They want to see Mark McGwire, Slugfest. They actually started writing about Ty Cobb. And the thing was, Ty Cobb had to be the example, to set the example for how sports athletes had to act as a famous sports athlete before that was a thing. Because people would walk up to him and say, hey, can I have your autograph? Well, who do you look for? Because there's no one in the past of America to say this is how you handle yourself whenever people walk up to you at the bar. Whenever Ty Cobb is slumped over drunk, with all the rest of his teammates, is that how you're supposed to act? Or is that not? So he became the standard of the American sports icon, and yet he never won a championship.
Now,
I'm taking it back. It's taking it way back. But you bring up a lot of really good points.
Now, you mentioned that he served in the military and that he was the president of the Negro League for a time. I take it this was...
Only time that word is appropriate in 2019 is for white people can say the Negro Leagues for sure. But that's like the only thing. Speaking of, relocated to Kansas City, the Negro League Museum right down the road next to a barbecue joint. I'll let you guys know what it's like.
Yes, keep us informed. And now, Dealer, since Ty Cobb played, I assume, in the early 1900s, did he play on any teams that we would, us millennials would recognize?
The Detroit Tigers, and currently the Oakland A's, but back then it was called the Philadelphia Athletics. But that wasn't very long. That was a 2-year stint. His major thing was playing for 21 years as a Detroit Tigers player. Then went back, and that was primarily his thing after he went on to Philly. But it was mostly Detroit, and that was his huge thing right there. 12-time batting champion. This guy is absolutely the baseball figure.
Well, it sounds like Detroit has an easy pick for their Detroit Sports Mount Rushmore and Ty Cobb. Very unfortunate that a guy as accoladed as he also to never win a championship. And we'll see if the misery continues as we go on to our cousin Vinny as he tells us his athlete that never won a championship.
Okay, so my guy, I'm going to be self-admitted, is very Dallas biased. With kind of my theme today is going to be a little more home-based and Dallas-based with this. That being said, there's a couple of guys that I want to say that I easily could have put on this list. Allen Iverson should easily be on this list. Steve Nash, I think, could easily be on this list. Barry Sanders, Dan Marino, all guys that I think you could throw on here. But the guy I went with is Adrian Beltre. I went with Adrian Beltre, who his first year, he played 20 years in the league. I don't know if people know he had that long a career, but his rookie year was in 1998 with the Dodgers. He spent he was with the Dodgers until 2004. He wound up going to Seattle, where he, really made his name. He had a season where he hit 48 homers in a year. Hit 334 for the entire season in 2004. And then he goes to Seattle, and then he comes to the Rangers in 2011. And, of course, 2011 is when the Texas Rangers go to the World Series. They wind up losing in tragic fashion. We won't go into that. And then he spends the rest of his career with the Rangers. Now, I bring this up. This guy spent 20 years in Major League Baseball. And when you talk about 1998 to 2018, the competitiveness in baseball was absurd. You're talking about kind of the tail end of the steroid era. And then the type of athletes, you see it all over the place in football and really every sport now. Basketball, hockey, they all see it. The athletes are just bigger and stronger now. All right, modern medicine, modern training techniques. These guys are better. So he shows up at the tail end of the steroid era. He finishes out his career when there's more athletes on the field than there ever has been. And he winds up with a career in 20 years. He batted .286. And that's just an incredible average for that long. He hit 477 home runs. He's got over 3,000 hits. And the Texas Rangers, for me, those years from 2011 to really about 2014 when things all fell to hell against Toronto. I don't know if it was 2014 or 2015. It was around there. But he was the heart and soul of that team that was always trying to recover from their World Series berth. And the leadership he brought to the clubhouse and getting to watch that firsthand is the reason I threw him in there.
I did not know that Adrian Beltre was not a Texas Ranger for the entirety of his career. I honestly thought he joined the team before the World Series run in 2011. So I learned something about good old Beltre, and it really is a shame because him and Bartolo Colon were the last players out of the 90s to retire, and Beltre never got that. Unlike Pudge Rodriguez, Adrian Beltre did not get a championship, and it's a damn shame, honestly, especially considering the Rangers are retiring his jersey soon.
Well, and third base is, there's a respect I've got for third baseman, and he was just, from the moment he got here, he was a class act, but he was a game changer, and he was a hype man, and he was a leader, and he really, without him, the Rangers don't even come close to having the most successful run in their team history, which was that 2011 to 2014 series. So I think it's a damn shame he never got that ring.
I remember when they signed him, they had originally set that money aside for Cliff Lee, who ended up signing with the Phillies, and Adrian Beltre was actually the second option in that particular situation, and they ended up with the better player.
And it was kind of a weird pick at the time because he had a run with the Dodgers, he had a run with Seattle, and he was really good, but he'd been in the league, 13 years. You started to get a little old, and it was like, okay, it's a lot of money to spend on Adrian Beltre, but if he shows up, it's worth it. And the investment paid for itself 20-fold.
It indeed did for Adrian Beltre, as he is now Rangers royalty. And to close out this segment, Chip, you've been kind of quiet, so who is your athlete that you think is fantastic that unfortunately never got a championship?
So my first pick was actually it was going to be Stockton. I was actually going to do Stockton and Malone just because two Hall of Famers that were today in the NBA. Everything kind of like on offense, so much just kind of initiates from the pick and roll, and those two were kind of really the pioneers of every time down the floor pick and roll and then play off of that. So instead of stealing your pick, I'll go with one of my backup ones. Go with Barry Sanders. Probably the most electrifying player to ever play in the NFL. Just racked up insane numbers. Like his highlight tape is just it's like a 3-hour long highlight tape. Just all these crazy runs. But yeah, just so happened to get stuck on one of the worst teams, one of the worst organizations of that era. I mean, really NFL history.
And what was that organization, Chip?
Oh, the Lions.
Oh, that poor bastard.
Yeah, it was not great for him. I also wanted to throw in kind of an honorable mention. I don't think he's the best to never win a championship, but Ernie Banks, just because he played for so long, but he actually never even made the postseason, even though he was two-time MVP, over 500 homers, the Hall of Famer. But yeah, those Cubs teams, kind of the same as the Lions, just were awful, especially during his prime years. So just kind of wanted to give him a mention spot.
A little honorable mention.
Yeah, I like that Ernie Banks one. That's a solid pick.
Yeah.
That was Ernie Banks as well.
Yeah, and Barry Sanders is pretty much the name you think of when you, or at least one of the first names you think of when you hear great football player that never won a championship, as unfortunate as it is.
Yeah, Barry Sanders was kind of a number 2, number 3 pick for me as well, because I think, like you said, that's the most electrifying player that's ever played football.
Yeah.
And speaking of electrifying, as this segment comes to a close, how dare you, sir? There's nothing more electrifying than just a solid championship run, whether it be through just solid play or maybe it's a team winning their first championship in decades or tens of decades even. And as we move into our next segment, the most meaningful championship run since the year 2000. I did put a caveat on this, that it has to be 2000 to present day. And, well, depending on what happens in this NBA Finals, unfortunately you can't count that. And so, Chip, you ended the last segment. Why don't you start us off on this one? In your opinion, what is the most meaningful championship run since the year 2000 in any sport?
So I feel like this might sound a little biased being from Dallas, but honestly, I tried thinking of any other one, and nothing really even came close to me. The 2011 Dallas Mavericks title run, I'd say that has to be the most electrifying, the most meaningful. Dirk, for his entire career, he was thought of as that soft hero that can't win in the playoffs. The Mavericks lost the 2-0 lead in the finals in 2006. They were the first team to lose to an 8 seed as a 1 seed. They just had all those heartbreaks. And even before Dirk, they were the laughing stock of the NBA. So you have that underdog team that, when everybody picked Portland to upset them, the 3 versus 6, and then they, I think it was, they beat the Lakers. I think they swept, if I remember right.
The Mavs did, in fact, sweep the defending champion Lakers.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Then they go up against Westbrook and Durant, and they beat them, and then you're going up against
and James Harden, right?
Yeah, James Harden too.
Wasn't James Harden on that team? Yeah.
He in fact was, but he was more of a six-man than he is now.
James Harden, for that one game that Dirk took like 15 shots, scored like 40, 45, 47 points or something, had like 22 free throws. And then you get to the first year of the Big Three in Miami, you know, the super team that's going to win 5, 6, 7, 8 championships. And Dirk, I mean, really the entire team, it was just like played their role perfectly. You had JJ coming off the bench, you had Jason Terry hitting threes off the bench. Jason Kidd was defending LeBron for half the series and did a really good job. Sean Marion, Tyson Chandler, just all of them, just kind of like a bunch of really smart, insane superstar and a brilliant coach going against, what was supposed to, like, people thought when LeBron teamed up with Wade and Bosh that it was going to be, that the NBA was going to be over.
It was a bloodbath, yeah.
Yeah, and Dirk, just kind of led his guys single-handedly the entire playoffs. So I'd say that has to be the most meaningful.
As Dallas natives, aside from Dealer, yeah, it is very difficult to make an argument against the 2011 Mavs, especially if we're talking the year 2000 and up. But we'll see if there's some disagreement as we go to our cousin Vinny for his pick of the most meaningful championship run in any sport since the year 2000.
Okay, so again, I'm going to be admittedly totally biased here. My name is Vince McCoy. My name is Vince McCoy, as in Vince Young and Colt McCoy. And the University of Texas is something that is very close to my heart. I want to give an honorable mention to the 2016 Cavs and LeBron James when he won that championship when he came back to Cleveland. But that's my honorable mention because I have to give my most impactful championship run to the 2005 Texas Longhorns when they went 13-0. Yeah. And I'll take you down this road real quick. So, first off, I'm going to name a couple of guys that in college football lore, and really several of them onto the NFL, had just amazing careers. Obviously, Vince Young was the quarterback of that team, and if you follow college football, you know who Vince Young is. I don't need to go into that. But the running back of Jamal Charles in that backfield, and then you look at the names on defense, Michael Griffin, Michael Huff, Aaron Harris, Cedric Griffin, Aaron Ross, Brian Robeson, Brian Arakpo, and Marcus Griffin all had NFL careers of over like 5-6 years each. Some of these guys played for a long time. I mean, guys like Brian Arakpo, Michael Huff, and Brian Robeson just retired this year after playing for the Minnesota Vikings forever. My point is, the team was absolutely stacked, and beyond the talent,
my friend Will Allen, the starting left guard, by the way.
There you go. Who blocked for Vince Young and Jamal Charles. Such a dynamic backfield. I'm going to take you down the run of their season real quick. Again, they went 13-0. The highlights here, they traveled to Ohio State in 2005. It was no easy task, and Vince Young won with about a minute and a half left in the fourth quarter, 25-22, to a touchdown in the corner of the end zone to Linus Swede. They go on to steamroll just about everybody they play, including they beat Oklahoma 45-12, which is unheard of in the Red River Shootout. They go on to smoke everybody in the Big 12, highlighting it with a 70-3 victory in the Big 12 championship. That's right, they beat Colorado in the Big 12 championship 70-3. And then they go on to play what, in my opinion, is the greatest college football game that's ever been played, where number 1 USC, undefeated, squared off against number 2 Texas, undefeated. USC was coming off a run that many were calling one of the great, if not the greatest dynasties college football had ever seen. With what Pete Carroll had done, Matt Leinart as the quarterback, Reggie Bush, and the amount of NFL talent on both sides of the ball on that team was absurd. So going into the game, the hype was real, and it ends. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen the 2005 National Championship highlights, I highly recommend looking them up. I mean, it stands the test of time to this day. Vince Young runs it into the court of the end zone, beats the USC Trojans, who were going on 3 national championships in a row if they won that. And he did it with an amazing team. I think it showed that college football still had some parity. USC never regained their strength again. Reggie Bush wound up having to forfeit that Heisman for, honestly, kind of bullshit reasons that I hope get sorted out one day. But my point is, I think that run in college football at the time was the most impactful thing, and they won what, in my opinion, is the greatest college football game that's ever been played. So I'm biased as hell, but the 2005 Texas Longhorns, that's my pick.
All right. Wow.
Quite an impressive championship run you have there, cousin Vinny. I'm certainly gonna have to look up the highlight videos you mentioned here after the show. In the meantime, however, we are gonna go to our good buddy Dealer as he tells us his championship run.
Okay, so I'm just going to say this. I'm not regionally biased on this one. But I am emotionally biased. So these are saying this is they did not win. The team that I picked. I think a championship run is a championship run. I think it's a championship run. It's a championship run. You know, and this is a very, very emotionally charged emotion. You know, I want to say my honorable mentions before I begin this one. I'm going to go ahead and say the Boston Red Sox 2013. Coming off the Boston bombing, Dirty Water, all came together. Solid. They actually even won it. That was the year where no one predicted them to do anything. Great look for the team of the Red Sox to pull together and, you know, pull off a championship. Hats off to them. They were my next pick. Third pick, I think a historic, absolutely historic run of the NHL playoffs. First team to do it. It was their very first year. The Golden Knights show up and just plow through everybody. I think, what is it, every single news headline, wow, they're going to be historically bad. This team is going to be lucky to win 20 games. This game is going to be lucky to win 15 games. That team went all the way to the Stanley Cup championship final. I mean, come on. That just says a lot about the Vegas Golden Knights right there. So you guys get my third nod right there. Obviously, it didn't end up how I wanted it to. I think a lot of pure hockey fans are really, really excited that some team didn't just show up in the league and barrel through everybody and win the championship, because then that'd be like, all right, we got a problem on our hands here. Even though all it was just a really smart GM and a goaltender who was playing as if he was just sitting on top of his head and they couldn't shoot toward the net at all. But anyway, my pick is going to be the New York Yankees 2001. I don't know if that's what you guys thought I was heading with that one on this one here, but I think it was the most emotionally charged historical one, because we just had America get attacked, right? You know, everybody looked to baseball to fill the void right away. Baseball was put on hold. A lot of things were put on hold. Flights, transportation. It just seemed like America was sitting still. But then once 2001 rolled around, September, people are tuning into the. They're watching President George Bush on the mound with a ball and Derek Jeter's behind home plate with a baseball. It just seemed like all of America was tuning in at that moment to see their commander-in-chief say, hey, that may have happened, but we're going to get past this. And oh my gosh, was the energy around that team phenomenal. From there on out, it just seemed like no one could get in the way of the New York Yankees all the way to the World Series. You got your Exactly. And you had power players there. Jeter and Rivera, but nobody thought Mariano Rivera with the same cutter would blow the World Series. To a guy on a bloop hit single, Gonzalez. And it was
Gonzalez.
It was unbelievable how that all came up to be. But I think with the most emotionally charged championship run, that's got to be New York Yankees. They put America on their back. They said, let's go baseball. Come on, America. We can get over the attacks, and we can really, just ride this energy, put some healing, and make everyone excited that baseball's back. So there you go. My pick is the 2001 New York Yankees run.
Now, did you mention that this team did not win the World Series?
Correct.
Who beat them?
The Arizona Diamondbacks with the co-MVPs. That is how they beat them.
Randy Johnson, Kurt Schilling. Luis Gonzalez was a good player. Tony Womack had some speed, but they had no business beating that Yankee squad for sure.
Yeah, they had no business.
Randy Johnson kills birds. Of course he's going to kill Yankee batters.
I will say, though, I do remember, I'm not a Yankees fan, and I've never cheered for the Yankees, but I do remember that run in 2001. And I remember being a kid after 9/11, and I couldn't help but find myself getting emotionally attached to the Yankees and their run. And then they lost, and I was a little kid, whatever. But
right,
it's when you break it down to an emotional run for a team, it's hard to argue with that.
And a lot of people always say, "Oh, well, it's a tragedy championship." Because look at all the teams that whenever a tragedy happens in their city, the team rallies together and they win the championship. That didn't happen. The Astros with Hurricane Harvey, the 2013 Boston Red Sox, with the flood, and you have and in Vegas with their shooting. And it didn't happen with Vegas. It didn't happen with New York. So I mean, those kind of teams do stand out. That I don't really buy into the whole, oh, you're just a tragedy championship team. It didn't work out for the Yankees, but I would have loved it to for the 2001 Yankees.
Well, that's certainly an interesting pick, considering they didn't win the championship. But you brought up a lot of good points, and that's a very meaningful championship run, even if they didn't quite get to the top of the mountain. Moving right along here, we got Coolhand. What's your most meaningful championship run since the year 2000?
So since you put the caveat on this that it had to be after 2000, I wanted to say my Dallas Stars in '99.
Oh.
I wanted to. Man. Oh wait, did I already say it? Whatever.
The entire city of Buffalo says that's not a goal.
And the entire city of Buffalo is wrong.
Fuck that.
I heard that so much, but hey. You know what? It wasn't a goal, but it counted, so it doesn't matter. Go Stars.
Don't matter, that ring is shiny.
Yeah. Whose names are on the cup? Brett Hall's name is on that cup, so that's all that matters. But since I can't talk about that team, I would have said my Texas Tech Red Raiders this year had instant replay, not slowed it down and zoomed it in so much. on Moretti's hand, but since they lost that game, I'm gonna go with the 2014 San Antonio Spurs.
Oh yeah,
they're coming off losing. Fuck Ray Allen. Fuck Ray Allen. I still hate that guy to this day. I was about to pop a bottle of champagne when Ray Allen made that fucking shot. Damn, fuck that guy.
That was really cool, though.
So when they came back the next year and beat the Heat and had the biggest margin of victory ever in a finals, it was so satisfying. And the only team that really gave the Spurs a decent run in that year was the Mavs in the first round. They had to go 7 games. But after that, they kind of walked through everybody else, the Trailblazers and the Thunder. before they got to the NBA Finals. And then they beat the Cavaliers in 5. And so it was just so satisfying to come back, beat that team. It was basically the same team, and really beat their brains in. That series was never close. The Heat won one game, and they won by a point. Every other game was by at least 10 points for the Spurs. They beat the crap out of them. But think about that team. It also had Tim Duncan. It had Manu Ginobili. It had Tony Parker. It had Danny Green. It had Kawhi Leonard. Was actually the Finals MVP that year. He's probably about to win another one. It was a pretty stacked roster. And so it was just, like I said, it was nice to get the revenge. It's not very often you get to get revenge. And when you beat the crap out of somebody like that, it just makes it even better.
Well, and it was the diminish of the Heat, which, you know, when LeBron made his move.
Play together.
Yep, that was it. So that was kind of what finally stuck the knife in this evil empire that had been created with LeBron and Bosh and Wade and the decision and, you know, all this drama. So definitely an impactful run.
Now, isn't it true that Tim Duncan during this series, you know, the typically calm, composed, the strong but silent type, wasn't he kind of more vocal this time around?
Yeah, he didn't mind getting in the face of a few people. Him and Joey Crawford got into it a little bit. Everybody gets into it with Joey Crawford. But he also kind of, I think he let them know that the Spurs were still the best team and that they weren't done yet. Now, that was the last championship. But, you know, like I said, the Ray Allen shot, the Heat really had no business winning the series the year before, because that was actually only Game 6 on the Ray Allen shot. And then they came back to San Antonio and just beat the crap out of them. But, like I said, to come back and really just, no, we're the best team. You guys put this all-star team together, and we did all this through the draft. But it showed the power of the draft and how really building that way instead of bringing everybody together is kind of the way to go.
And the Spurs 2014 championship definitely, I bet for all the Miami/LeBron haters, it was quite satisfying seeing the Heat get beat so badly. And that's an interesting pick. And it was also going to be one of my picks for this topic. I had a few picks. I mean, obviously the 2011 one, that was the first one that came to mind. But I thought to myself, you know what? Someone else is going to get that, so I'm not even going to bother. The 2016 Cavs team was also an honorable mention of mine because, I mean, that's a fucking NBA 2K playthrough. Changed my mind. And then I was thinking of doing the 2014 Spurs, but I thought to myself, oh, Coolhand's either going to pick that or the 2016 Cavs, so that's not a coin flip I want to deal with. And so I thought about it. I kept my basketball theme going. And then a little light bulb went over my head. Let me ask y'all something. If I would have told you that a prime Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, along with Karl Malone and Gary Payton were on the same team together, would y'all think that they would win a championship their first year together?
Dang near did.
This is actually this is my second pick, so I like it.
Well, as Coolhand spoiled, this team did not win the championship. This team, the 2004 Los Angeles Lakers, had a prime Shaquille O'Neal and a prime Kobe Bryant, with also number 2 on the NBA all-time scoring list, Karl Malone, top 5 power forward of all time, and one of the best defensive players to ever play the game, Gary Payton, a.k.a. the Glove.
Wow.
And yet, I just want you to listen to what this team went through in the playoffs. They entered this Los Angeles Lakers team entered the playoffs as the number 2 seed, 2 games behind the 1st seed Kevin Garnett-led Minnesota Timberwolves. And the first round, the Lakers played the Yao Ming Houston Rockets, disposed of in 5 games. Round 2, the Tim Duncan San Antonio Spurs, 6 games. Western Conference Finals, the Kevin Garnett Timberwolves, 6 games. And yet, this team, upon reaching the NBA Finals, lost to the 2004 Detroit Pistons. Now, for those of you less basketball inclined, the Detroit Pistons are best known for their late 90s, late 80s, early 90s championships run in 1989 and 1990 with the Bad Boy Pistons. You got Joe Dumars, Bill Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman, Isaiah Thomas. The Bad Boys Pistons create an entire defensive scheme just to stop Michael effing Jordan. But after the 1990 run, there was nothing. No championships, no nothing. And now, pop quiz, kids. I'm going to list you off some of these Detroit Pistons players and see if any of you recognize the names. Let's start with probably the most well-known one. Ben Wallace. Do any of you recognize that name?
Absolutely.
Yeah, 2 or 3 times Defensive Player of the Year.
Okay, bad example, but still. This is honestly, if you ever wanted to make a case that pairing up a pair of old veteran superstars with a pair of young superstars, young-ish superstars, this is the case study of why that experiment does not work. This series, the NBA Finals, was decided in 5 games, and every single game, the closest point differential that I can see here was 8. And that was in 2 games. Game 2, in which the Los Angeles Lakers won in overtime, 99-91, and then in Game 4, where the Pistons won, 88-80. And the rest of the games were just 2 10-point differentials, at least. I mean, talk about Motor City mayhem after that championship run. I mean, could you imagine what that parade must have been like? Because I'm not quite familiar with how the rest of the Detroit sports were in that time. I know they have the Red Wings, Tigers, and Lions, but
the Red Wings were really good back then.
Oh, they were?
Yeah, they were.
Tigers and Lions were not. So, yeah, you basically had the Red Wings and then the Pistons when they came up. So,
And
Detroit needs a lot to cheer for. Detroit deals with things that other cities don't have to deal with, and that's unfortunate for Detroit. But they need things to cheer for. I remember that Pistons championship. Yeah.
depressing.
I would like to call this championship run by the Detroit Pistons in 2004 the 2016 Cavs before it was cool. You got a team, a city with not a terribly long championship drought, even in just the sport of basketball, but it was a drought. And then this team going up against a pretty similar team to a lot of super teams, and even the big 3, LeBron, Bosh, and Wade Heat. The Detroit Pistons come in, they win in 5 games, and they cement themselves like, no, we are a good team. What happened afterwards is a goddamn tragedy, but still, this championship run is my pick.
I hate to interject here. When you said the Detroit Pistons, they came back from the city for having a drought. Is 2 years a drought? Because 2002, the Red Wings won it.
I don't know. Let's ask the city of Boston.
No, they think 136 days is a drought.
How many car factories closed down in those years, though? And if, Detroit, I'm just saying, Detroit could use a win.
Detroit could use a win. Oh, my gosh.
I don't know about the car factory. I don't have Michael
Also
Moore
back
on
when the
speed
Tigers
dial.
were losing like 115 games a year.
I think that'd be a really good topic is how long is it a drought versus just a winless period?
And with
And does
that,
it depend on the city?
and this topic,
Yes. City factors probably do play an effect. I agree.
and we shall expand on this topic on the next episode of the Backyard Bullshit Podcast. But for
Take a note of
now,
that.
it is on behalf of myself, Chip, Coolhand, cousin Vinny, and our good buddy dealer. I myself, Mickey, will be signing off for the night.
This is Dealer Cash
Appreciate
now.
the time.
It's cool hand. Y'all keep it out there.
Yeah, this is Chip. Thanks for having me on again, guys. It was fun.
We're very grateful that you came back, Chip, and we look forward to working with you again soon. But for everyone else, have a good rest of y'all's night, and thanks for listening.